Hello, this is Alex from the Advent Label Applicator Company, and this is going to be a demonstration of the unique Advent 310, which is a push-through pressure-sensitive labeler. As you can see here, we already have it set up. This particular model has a unique coder on it. Instead of a mechanical hot stamp coder, we actually have a inkjet-based coder. And as you can see here, it's printing 2 lines of information onto the label. The big advantage of an inkjet-based coder, it's a lot easier to change the message. You could go up to 6 lines of information, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 6 lines of information. You could also use the software to condense it into tight spots. There are some limitations. It will only print along the length of the label. It will not print across or the width of the label. And also it will not work on all surfaces. Even though these new alcohol-based inks are working fantastic, we always want to receive samples ahead of time because we need to validate it. Whereas with the hot stamp code, that will typically work on almost any type of label. So what we're going to go ahead is I'm going to quickly turn it on and just show you the push-through feature. As you can see here, we have a 310. I'm inserting a beer can. This is what the labeler has been purchased to do, is to label 12-ounce aluminum cans for a coffee product. And as you can see here, it labeled 3 containers and did a really nice job. The code is already on here because they're being coded in line. We don't have the coder on, and we're going to go into greater detail, but that's just the 310 with this SmartJet Plus inkjet coder coding this bottom left-hand corner. You can see it does a really nice job. And we're going to go ahead now into further detail about the coder. So when you receive the machine, it will pretty much be set up, but the thing that we need to work with or become familiar with is the threading of the machine, because it does have extra rollers to allow the label to be presented to the coder. And that's what essentially this 310 has. It has these aluminum brackets that are attached, and this bracket allows you to move the label or the position of the coder to the label. So you can move it on the x-axis up and down by releasing these 2 knobs here. Generally you can make witness marks once you get it dialed in for a particular label, but you can move it up and down. Now you are limited to about 12 inches here of movement. So do be aware of that. So you can move it back up, you can move it down, and that allows you to do kind of a large adjustment as far as where we need the label or the code to be presented on the label. Then you can also move it left and right. There's an Allen head screw here, and you would take your Allen tool, which comes with the machine, and then to move it left or right, you would go ahead and we'll have to get a different Allen wrench tool, but here you would simply loosen this up and then slide it left and right. And it's only the coder itself that you have to move. There's no backing like on a mechanical hot stove coder to keep in line. So you just move it left and right and then up and down. And then once you have it dialed in, you want to go ahead and, again, I like to make Sharpie marks here and see where it's dialed in. When you turn on the machine, you'll see there's a master switch directly for the SmartJet Plus. It's right here. And you'll see here the screen comes on and there's no cartridge in there. So it'll automatically error out. So I'm going to take my cartridge. Because we're using alcohol-based inks, it's always important to keep this little clip on the cartridge head. That makes sure that it doesn't dry out or have the ink skin over on this gold print head. If you do see ink there, generally you want to take your lint-free pads and wipe down to get rid of the ink. If it's been sitting around for a little bit, a really good trick is and to purge the air out of the system really, really quickly is just to put the ink over it and then give it a good snap. And you can see there a lot of ink comes out, but you can see it's very, very nice and clean on the gold head. Now, again, I can wipe it down, and that should be ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead. And on both machines, when you receive them, you would receive a manual on the 310 push-through labeler, and then you would also receive one for the SmartJet Plus. And you want to review both of them because they'll give you very, very good operating instructions. What's not really listed in the manuals as far as adjusting the hot stamp coater, and that's why, or the inkjet coater, and that's why we're going to have this video. As you can see here, as soon as I put the cartridge in, it immediately detects it. You don't have to turn off the machine on and off. You can do that while it's on for the cartridge in there. And you can see it's showing a little preview of the message that we currently have, which is best before and then date here. And what you need to do is generally, if you don't have it dialed in, we need to run it through a couple labels to see where it's printing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll tell you how I'm going to adjust it. So generally I'm going to turn it on. I always want to use a container if possible. If not, the way to do it is to push down the trigger. You can't do it that way. On the hot stamp coater you can, but on the inkjet based system you have to run a product, because the way that the sequence works is when you insert the container and that label starts to move, that's when it's spraying ink onto the label. So that's when it's firing. And there can't be any pause to that. It has to be a consistent speed that's pulling that label on. So you can only do that with the product in there. Okay, so I'm going to run that a couple times. We're going to see where the inkjet code is being printed. And I can see here, here's one right here. And actually, this actually even a better location. So you can see here, I moved it slightly and I have it going a little bit more in this white area, and that's actually perfectly located. Now if I wanted to move it to the left or to the right, again, it would be loosen up this Allen head screw, and then you can move it left or right. And as far as placement of where that code is going to go, if I wanted to move it a little bit closer to the edge, I would probably move up. So let's say if I could get a little bit closer to the leading edge, you can see here I moved it about 1/4 of an inch. And then we'll go ahead and see where we are. And again, this would be more for the growth adjustment. We'll do one more here. And then we'll sit up. So we lost the, okay, that's too bad. We're actually at the end of the labels, but I'll go ahead and turn off the machine. I'm gonna let it be for here, and we'll just check. And you can see here, it's hard to tell. I might have not moved the carriage, but that would be the idea. You can move the imprint forward or backwards by moving the bracket up and down. Now, what's neat about having a computer-based coder is that you can also do things in software. So the SmartJet Plus comes with this keyboard, this wireless keyboard. It'll be ready to go. They have a receiver already built into this little USB slot. And I'm going to slide the keyboard out. It's pretty nice, compact here. There's an on-off switch on the back. So you want to turn it on.
Batteries on.
Oops. Let's see here. And the batteries aren't in here. So
right there inside the box.
okay. So when you receive it, when you ship it, we're probably going to ship it without the batteries installed. but definitely double check. I'll probably actually leave it in the keyboard because you'll be using the machine right away. So I'm just going to put them in, and then I'm going to toggle that so it's in the on position. And then you can just see here, I'll put it right by the screen. You can see here it immediately becomes responsive. I hit the escape. I could go to my message, operation, settings. So the most important, the message, you could go through the manual. You could save up to 50 plus messages. You could set up again 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 lines. I could do a quick one. So right now it's in the print mode, so I need to stop it. So I'm going to go operation, stop, and then you'll hear a beep, and then we can stop. Now I could go to message and create a new message. So you could do normal, uppercase. There's a lot of different settings. Again, go through the manual, but you can see here you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 lines. So I'm going to do 2 lines here, and then I could just do test. I could do my caps lock, test, whoops. Test, there we go. Okay, caps lock doesn't work, but that might be because of the font. But you can see here, I did test, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the second line. You can also do other things that you can insert, different batch numbers, things like that. Lot codes, again, that's explained in the manual. But we could go into, and then we're going to hit the escape. You're going to hit save the message. It saves, and then you could go to your message. You could go open to look at your different messages. We have 4 stored in here. So I'm going to go, if I want to use that message, I hit enter, use. If you're familiar with the computer, it's pretty straightforward. The 2 most important buttons are the escape to go up and then the enter to select. But besides that, we did the message really quickly. Again, operation is to start and toggle, start and stop the coder. And then there's also a purge if you need to purge. Generally, I like to purge it, especially when it's mounted the way that I did it, which is removing the cartridge and cleaning the head. Purging here, you're going to get a puddle of ink because you're generally going to be threaded, or it's going to be a roller right there. So I wouldn't use the purge function. But again, the most second most important setting would probably be the settings. And that's where you could affect how quickly it prints. We have it set for 30, and that's going to be pretty much where you want to keep it on this machine as it's mounted. If you want to get the letters condensed a little bit more, you could, or a little more spread out, you could fool around with the speed. Speed's going to allow you to either condense the lettering, the imprint, or spread it out. The resolution is how much ink is being sprayed. I like to use a setting of 300 by 150. 300 by 300 is too much ink for most applications, and 300 by 100 is a nice possibility too, but it might be a little bit too faint. Depending on what type of label you're printing on. So 300 by 150, the middle setting, is a really good compromise. And then the density. The density is how much, or again, it affects how much ink is being spread out. The smaller the number, the less ink, the darker or the lighter the imprint. Level 5, it's going to be a lot of ink sprayed out, and it's going to be very, very dark. And generally, you want to be doing a setting of probably 1 or 2. You can fool around with it, but you have to remember, this is where it sprays the ink onto the label, and then it only has about 6 inches for that to dry before it hits this roller. And it does dry very, very quickly, but the more ink you put onto the label, the little bit more challenging it is for that ink to dry and not transfer to that aluminum roller. So again, you'll have to work with your labels, see how they react. But a good starting point, again, is 300 by 150 and a density of 1 and 2. So I'm going to hit, I think we have it selected at level 1 here. And I just hit enter. And then probably the really other very, very important setting is delay. Delay allows you, think of it as an electronic control to fine tune where that imprint is going to go. So there's a couple different ways of doing it. You can actually move the photo eye. Where we have it set, I think is a really, really good starting point, but we're at the limits of where we could adjust it. Again, we don't have your labels, so we're not exactly sure what the final adjustment is going to be. But typically you want the photo eye to be at the bottom label, and then it's a little U shape, so you just make sure that it's reading the backing paper. The backing paper is going through that little cutout, and it's hitting that little crosshair, which it's being covered, but you get used to it. And then once you kind of get that dialed in where you want it to print on the label by moving the photo eye in the bracket, then you could use the delay to fine tune it. So if you need to move it a little bit closer to the trailing edge, you might want to increase the delay. If you want to move it further away from the trailing edge, closer to the leading edge, then you would decrease your delay. Right now we have it set for 10, and that should be good. Again, we don't have your labels, so you're going to have to play around with the setting, but at least you know that it's there, and you could make the appropriate adjustments. So the last thing I'm going to go through is we don't have to worry about sensor, but the two others is the direction. So depending on how your labels come off the roll, whether it's copy position number 3 or number 4, you might have to flip the lettering appropriately. So again, you can see it gives you kind of a little bit of a graphic. If I were to run this in copy position, the opposite copy position to this, I would probably have to go to this bottom setting right here. So you could go ahead and fool around with that, but that's a quick way of adjusting for the copy position of the labels. Besides that, when you're not using the machine, definitely it's good to unclip the cartridge. Just again, this little lock right here, and then it just pulls out, and then you go ahead and just put it on the clip, and that is pretty much it. And what's really great about these systems is even if this cartridge, generally you'll have more than one cartridge, if this becomes a little bit troublesome, you just put a new cartridge in, you get a new print head, and you're off to go. So as far as avoiding downtime, this is really a nice system to go with, because pretty much when you switch out the cartridges, you're getting a whole new printer. So it minimizes the maintenance, and pretty much the only maintenance is to keep the nozzle clean with the lint-free cloth, and maybe doing that little wrist snap to help get any air out of the system. So that is pretty much it. This is the Advent 310 with the SmartJet Plus coder. Any questions, give us a call at 800-846-7716. Thank you.